Welcome everybody to part 1 of a new series I'm starting on my channel called Everything You Need to Know About the SAT Math by an 800 Scorer. Today's episode is going to be on lines, the most frequently tested topic on the SAT. So it's pretty important that you guys have a good understanding of the topics and concepts I'm going to be talking about in this video, and that you guys understand the practice problems I will be going through at the very end. These notes will be linked down below in my Discord. I'll drop a link to my Discord, and be sure to join that if you want free access to the notes that you are seeing in front of you. But let's go ahead and get into it. So what is a line? A line is just really a function in the form f of x equals mx plus b, where m is going to be your slope and y is going to be your y-intercept. So the slope, you can think about the slope as kind of the steepness of the line. The greater the slope, the more steep it's going to be. The y-intercept is just the value at which a line intercepts the y-axis, hence the name y-intercept. Here you can see I've circled the y-intercept of this line in red. Something very important to know about y-intercepts is that they occur when x is 0. As you can see here, x has no value, right? We're at x equals 0 here, and the y-intercept occurs then. All right, cool. So now we know what slope and y-intercept are, but how can we solve for them? Well, when we're given any 2 points, x1, y1, and x2, y2 on a line, the slope of that line is just going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, or in other words, the change in y over the change in x. Here I've drawn a kind of diagram just to help you guys visualize what's going on. We can draw slope triangles to represent the rise and the run, or the change in y and change in x. Now, there are 4 types of slopes you will see on the SAT. There's positive slopes, which look like this. There are negative slopes, which look like this. There's a 0 slope that looks like this, and an undefined slope that looks like this. Now, let's talk about why is this a 0 slope and why is this an undefined slope, right? So we said that the change in y over the change in x is equal to the slope. Now, in this line right here, we have a big change in x, but we have no change in y, right? We're not going up or down in values. We're just staying at the same y value, meaning that our change in y is 0 over some change in x, and 0 divided by anything is 0. Similarly, for this undefined line, instead of having a no change in y, here we have no change in x. And if we have no change in x, that means we're dividing by 0, which can't happen, which is why that slope is undefined. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about parallel and perpendicular lines. So parallel lines look like this right here. They have the same slope, so the slopes are equal, and they never intersect, which means that they have no solutions, because in a linear system, a solution is a point at which the lines intersect, but in this case, they do not intersect, meaning we have no solutions. We're going to get into no solutions a little bit more when we talk about linear systems and systems of equations, but for now, we can skip over it. The key takeaway here is just that no solutions means same slope. There are tons and tons of problems on that exact topic, so it's good to know that. Perpendicular lines are pictured here. All you need to know is that the slopes are negative reciprocals, meaning you flip the slope of one and you add a negative sign to it, and that'll be your slope of your perpendicular line. And they also form 90-degree angles. That's pretty basic. That is really about it. So now let's go ahead and jump into some practice problems. Let's see how we can apply this knowledge into real test problems that have been administered. All right. Which of the following is an equation of line L in the xy plane above? Okay, so first thing to know is, remember, y equals mx plus b. M is your slope, and b is your y-intercept. In this case, do we have a y-intercept? Well, yeah. This line intercepts the y-axis at 1, at y equals 1. So let's fill in 1 for our y-intercept. Y equals mx plus 1. Now we need to find our slope. Well, remember, the change in y over the change in x is equal to the slope. So if we draw a slope triangle here, we can see that our change in y is equal to 2, and our change in x is equal to 2. 2 over 2 is just 1, meaning our slope is going to be 1. So let's fill that in for m. Now, when we multiply x by 1, we don't need to write the 1 there, so let's go ahead and get rid of that. y equals x plus 1. Therefore, our answer is D. Cool. Alright, some values of the linear function f are shown in the table above. Which of the following defines f? Okay, so remember, when we have x1 comma y2, when we have a point, x1 comma y1, and another point x2 comma y2, our slope is going to be equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. In this case, we have 3 points, right? This is a table. In other words, these are just points. We have 1 comma 5, we have 3 comma 13, and we have 5 comma 21. So let's pick any two of these points to figure out our slope. Let's use these two just because they have the smallest values, where this is 0.2 and this is 0.1. So the slope is going to be 13 minus 5 over 3 minus 1. This is going to be 8 over 2, or 4. So we know our slope is 4. So let's go ahead and fill that in for our y equals mx plus b. Remember, m is the slope. So y equals 4x plus b. Okay, so we found our slope, but how can we find our y-intercept, right? They don't give us a point that's 0 comma some value where we're just able to say, oop, that's going to be the y-intercept because the y-intercept occurs at x equals 0. So when we're in this situation, what we can actually do is take any one of these points, plug it into our line here, and solve for b. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's plug in 1 comma 5, where 1 is x and 5 is y. Because remember, these points are in the form x comma y. So we know y is 5. Let's go ahead and plug that in. 5 equals 4 times 1 plus b. Subtract the 4 over from both sides, and then we get 1 equals b. So the equation of our line, if we plug in 1 for b, we get y equals 4x plus 1. The answer is going to be C. Alright, number 4. The graph of line L is shown in the xy plane above. Which of the following is an equation that is parallel to line L? Okay, remember, parallel lines have the same slope. So let's go ahead and figure out the slope of this line right here. Let's draw a slope triangle. I'll draw this in red. That way it's a little bit easier to see. Okay, so let's look at our change in x. We have 1, 2. So our change in x is equal to 2. And our change in y is going to be equal to 1, 2 as well. So change in y equals 2. Oops, my bad. Change in y does not equal 2. Change in y equals 3 here. Right, because we have 1, 2, 3. Okay, remember, slope is change in y over change in x, so the slope is going to be 3 halves. Now the question asks, which of the following is an equation of a line that is parallel to line L? So we know line L has a slope of 3 halves. That means a line parallel to line L must also have a slope of 3 halves because parallel lines have the same slope. So let's look at which answer choice has a slope of 3 halves. And we know the slope is the coefficient of the x term. This does not have a slope of 3 halves, so A is out. B does not as well. But C does have a slope of 3 halves, meaning the answer is going to be C, and D does not either. Alright, problem 6. What is the slope of line M in the figure above? Okay, so here we are given 2 points, but we need to notice that one of these points is the y-intercept. Interesting. Okay, remember, when we're given 2 points, the slope is just going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So in this case, let's call this point 2 and point 1. So y2 is going to be y2 is going to be 0. Oops, my bad. 0 minus 2 over 4 minus 0. This is going to be negative 2 over 4, or in other words, negative 1 half. Okay, so we just solved for our slope. Now let's look at which answer choice matches up with that. Well, no. B looks exactly right, right? We have negative 1 half and negative 1 half. This is not the same, and this is not the same. And we can verify this by also noting that this line has a negative slope. So if I were on the SAT and I wanted to save as much time as possible, I could immediately eliminate options C and D because these slopes are positive. And then it would just be between option B or option A. Let's move on. The line y equals kx plus 4, where k is a constant, is graphed in the xy plane. If the line contains the point CD, where c does not equal 0 and d does not equal 0, what is the slope of the line in terms of c and d? Okay. Let's think about this a little bit. Remember that in this case we have y equals kx plus 4, and k is going to be our slope. If a line contains the point c comma d, what is the slope in terms of c and d? Okay, so if the line contains, what is the... Okay, so off the bat, we know that the y-intercept of this line is 4. Remember, the y-intercept occurs when x is 0, meaning that we have a point 0, comma 4 on the line, and we also have a point c, comma d. Remember, we want the slope of the line, and we said the slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. From here, we can go ahead and subtract. So we're going to call this point 2 and point 1. So we get d minus 4 over c minus 0 equals k, right? Because k is our slope in this case. I'm just going to simplify this a little bit. So I get d minus 4 over c equals k. So the answer is going to be d minus 4 over c, or option A. Cool. Number 9. The slope of line L is 1/2 and its y-intercept is 3. What is the equation of the line perpendicular to the line L that goes through 1, 5? Okay, so let's go ahead and write the equation of line L. So we know the slope is 1/2, y equals 1/2 x plus 3. What is the equation of the line perpendicular to line L? Okay, remember, perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. So a perpendicular line, I can draw perpendicular like this. Perpendicular line is going to have y equals -2, right? Because we flip the fraction, 2 over 1 is 2, and we add a negative sign. So -2x plus some y-intercept b. Now we need to find the y-intercept, and we can do that by plugging in a point we know is on the line. So let's go ahead and plug in 1, 5, where 5 is y and 1 is x. So 5 equals -2 times 1 plus b. Let's add 2 to both sides. So we get 7 equals b. Done. So now we can plug in 7 for b, and we get y equals -2x plus 7. So the answer is going to be b. All right. A line with a slope of 2/3 passes through the points 1, 4, and x, 10. What is the value of x? Interesting. So remember, again, slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We're going to call this point 2, and we're going to call this point 1. Remember, this equals slope. But they tell us the slope here. They tell us the slope is 2/3. So we can fill that in for slope. So 2/3 is going to equal 10 minus 4 over x minus 1. And we're looking for the value of x here. So let's go ahead and simplify this down a little bit more. 6 over x minus 1 equals 2/3. From here, we can go ahead and cross multiply. So we get 18 is equal to 2x minus 2. Add 2 to both sides. Divide by 2, and we get that x is equal to 10. Option D. Cool. Alright, a line in the xy plane passes through the origin and has a slope of 1/7. Which of the following points it lies on the line? Okay. Let's think about this. So it passes through the origin. That's a point, right? The origin is a point 0, 0. So we know that the equation of this line is, or we don't know the equation of the line, but we know that it has a slope of 1/7. So we can write y equals 1/7 x plus 0, right? Because the y-intercept is 0. You can rewrite that as y equals 1/7 x, because plus 0 doesn't really do anything. We can get rid of that. Now it says, which of the following points lies on the line? So when I plug in one of these x values, I must get the corresponding y value. So let's go ahead and try 0. When I plug in 0 for x, do I get 7? Y equals 0 times 1/7. Well, no, I get 0, because 0 times 1/7 is 0, so A is out. How about B? Let's go ahead and try B. If I plug in 1 for x, do I get 7? Well, let's see. Oops. So if I get y equals 1/7 times 1, well, 1/7 times 1 is just 1, so I'm not going to get 7. The answer is not B. How about C? So if I plug in 7, do I get 7? So y equals 1/7 times 7. Well, 1/7 times 7, these are going to cancel, so it's just y equals 1. But y doesn't equal 1 here. Y equals 7, so the answer is not that. Our answer is going to be D. And we can verify that by plugging it in, right? If we do y equals 14, plug in 14 for x, times 1/7, well, 14 divided by 7 is just 2. So y is going to equal 2, which matches up perfectly. Remember, this is x comma y. All right, last problem here. In the xy plane, the line determined by the points 2 comma k and k comma 32 passes through the origin. Which of the following could be the value of k? All right, let's go ahead and use our slope formula. Remember, it passes through the origin, which is 0 comma 0. So we know this line goes through 0 comma 0. So let's go ahead and use our slope formula to find the slope of this line. So we can let's call this point 2, and let's call this point 1. So we get y2, which is 0, minus y1, which is k, over x2, which is 0, minus x1, which is 2. So we get that the slope is k over 2. So let's plug that into our equation of a line. Y equals k over 2x plus 0. Remember, it's 0 because the y-intercept is 0. We can just get rid of that because plus 0 doesn't do anything. So we know our equation is y equals k over 2x. Now if we plug in one of these points, we will be able to find k. So let's go ahead and plug in 2 comma k. So we get, actually no, let's go ahead and plug in k comma 32. Makes it a little easier. So we get, 32 equals k over 2 times k. Now we can go ahead and divide by k. So I get 32 over k. I don't like the way I'm doing this. What is the actual way to do this though? Ugh, I have to pee so bad. Alright, last problem here. In the xy plane, the line determined by the points 2 comma k and k comma 32 passes through the origin. Remember, the origin means this line goes through the point 0 comma 0. Which of the following could be the point of, or the value of k? Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and use our slope formula. Let's call this point 2, and let's call this point 1. So we get y2 over y1 over x2 minus x1. And the slope is going to be k over 2. So let's plug that into our equation of a line. So y equals k over 2x, and then we're going to do plus 0 because the y-intercept is 0. So let's get rid of that plus 0 because plus 0 doesn't do anything. So now we know this is our equation of our line. So to find k, let's go ahead and plug in either one of these points and solve. Let's go ahead and do k comma 32. So I'm going to get 32 equals k over 2 times k. I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by k. And that's going to equal k over 2. Now I can cross multiply. So I get k squared is going to equal 32 times 2, which is 64. Take the square root of both sides, and I get that k is equal to 8, which is going to be answer choice C. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was a full review on lines. Go ahead and head to the description below to find these full notes and the link to the Discord. Peace.